is a new and dazzling star in the firmament today. Ace Frehley, the original and founding guitarist with Kiss, has died, aged 74. Ace is often portrayed as a bit of a clown and a bit of a drunk, but he added that rock and roll swagger to the sterile professionalism of Stanley and Simmons. But to suggest that's all he was would be to diminish his influence in one of the most iconic American bands ever. His contribution to Kiss is undeniable, even to the point where another guitarist had to adorn his persona right up to the very end. With all that Kiss setlist still made up of songs that Ace played on. He didn't write that many songs in comparison to Stanley and Simmons, but those he did mattered. I mean, Cold Gin was in the setlist right up to 2023, when Stanley and Simmons themselves called it a day, more than 40 years after Frehely himself had left the band. Cold Gin famously was one of the early songs that he wrote for Kiss, and was too shy to sing. A real source of embarrassment came in 1978 when the band released simultaneously solo albums, with Ace Frehley's by far the best, yielding that huge hit, of course, Back in the New York Groove. That Russ Ballard number has given a disco sheen. Of course, Ace was originally reluctant to do it, but producer Eddie Kramer twisted his arm. Of course, Ace is famed for another cover within the Kiss discography, which is the Stones' number 2000 Man off their Satanic Majesties album. This features on the band's Dynasty or Dynasty album, if you prefer. Michael Hain of The Guardian said, without Ace, Kiss would never have achieved their extraordinary greatness. And I have to agree. Even Gene Simmons this morning said, "Our hearts are broken, Ace has passed on. No one can touch Ace's legacy. I know he loved the fans, he told me many times. Sadder still, Ace didn't live long enough to be honoured at the Kennedy Center Honours event in December. Ace was the eternal rock soldier. Long may his legacy live on." Paul Daniel Frehely was born on April 27th, 1951 in New York City. Of course, the Ace nickname was given to him due to his success at scoring dates, apparently. He began playing guitar aged 13 and 8 years later answered a classified ad posted by Paul Stanley, who together with Simmons and Peter Criss were looking for a lead guitar player with flash and ability. And Ace certainly had that in abundance. His playing also had a bluesy swagger to it, a far cry from the more metallic sound this band would pursue after his departure. Simmons and Stanley have both spoken affectionately about Ace's audition. "He didn't make the most positive of first impressions," they said. "Some guy walked in with an orange sneaker and a red sneaker. I thought a bum had walked in off the street, except that he was carrying a guitar."
And when we opened the door to our rehearsal space on the appointed day in December 1972, we had a lot of takers, more than 30. After a long and mostly fruitless freak show, a guy walked in wearing one red sneaker and one orange sneaker. He was about my age and kind of goofy and pigeon-toed. Eventually, we plugged in with him, and almost from the minute we started playing, something happened that took us to a completely different place.
But luckily, Frehely's guitar playing had something very distinctive about it. Paul Stanley remembers, when we all plugged in and played together, there was just magic. The four members of Kiss each adopted sort of comic book style makeup and costumes, refusing to let their real faces be photographed in public, which of course was satirised on the Unmasked album in 1980. The band quickly earned a reputation for their live show, prompting many critics to just dismiss them as a kind of a meretricious display that made up for any real talent. But I would disagree. I think that although their levitating platforms, pyrotechnics, smoking guitars was certainly an event, there was something very distinctive about the chemistry between these four guys. And Ace in the early days certainly was very much about the chemistry. Ace was always seen a bit of a liability quite early on, with his makeup on the Hotter Than Hell album having to be airbrushed due to him crashing his car and the subsequent facial injuries. And those first few albums didn't really connect with the public, and the debut album sounds quite emaciated in my opinion. It wasn't until the 1975's Live album that this band went stratospheric. By the late 70s, with Simmons and Stanley wishing to pursue a more commercial sound, and of course at this point disco had seized the hearts, minds and trousers of a generation, and Kiss wanted a slice of that pie, I think. But Ace began to feel increasingly unhappy, exacerbated, I think, by the rock and roll lifestyle that he was very much immersed in. Not to mention, of course, the interpersonal tensions that were emerging within the band. Ultimately, this led to Frehely leaving the band after the recording of their disastrous concept album in 1981, The Music from the Elder. And although he features on the cover of arguably one of the band's greatest albums, 1982's Creatures of the Night, he doesn't actually contribute to any guitar to that record, although agreeing to mime along with some promo to support the then single I Love It Loud. In 1996 he reunited with his former bandmates for the Kiss reunion, although the same creative substance abuse and interpersonal issues all emerged to cause it all to kind of collapse in on itself. And the less said about Psycho Circus the better. But Ace reinvented himself, got clean, and released some pretty good solo albums. Anomaly from 2009, Space Invader from 2014, Origins Volume 1 from 2016, Spaceman from 2018, Origins Volume 2 from 2020, and 10,000 Volts from 2024. In 2011, Ace Frehley released his autobiography, No Regrets, a rock and roll memoir. In part, I think this was a response to some of the digs that he felt was apparent in Gene's book, and Paul's for that matter. There's no doubt that it's not just his playing, Ace's personality was a big part of this band. Who could forget that absolutely delicious interview with Tom Snyder back in 1979, in front of a visibly annoyed and irked Stanley and Simmons.
And tell me what each outfit means, and I'll start with you, Ace.
Well,
that means a cucumber.
I think this outfit is self-explanatory. I mean, you know.
But you're kind of like a spaceman, huh?
No, actually, I'm a plumber. On the side.
Well, listen, I got a little piece of pipe backstage I'd like to have you work on.
Tell me about it.
From designing the Kiss logo to reminding them that they were essentially a rock and roll band, not just a comic book. He had a distinctive sound and an untutored way of playing, which was very much a part of this band's makeup. No pun intended. For me, Ace was my favourite member of Kiss, and like all these passings, when these people go, it feels as if a big part of my childhood dies with them. He was the Space Ace, whose on-stage guitar pyrotechnics and his signature tune Shock Me would always be a highlight of those early Kiss shows. So it just leaves me to say, God bless you, Ace. Let eternal peace and light shine upon him. You've been watching a video by Classic Album Review. If you've enjoyed this, please do share it. Other than that, please do click like, subscribe, check that notification bell, and check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at the channel. It's always much appreciated. Anyway, I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which is hope you're well, staying safe, and of course that you keep listening.